All right, so for this session, I'm going to talk a little bit about gua sha, also known as dermabrasion or stridulation, depending on where you're coming from, and it has different names, but it's also a pretty universal process or a pretty cosmopolitan, widespread process. That something that I learned alongside of moxa and cupping, and that I feel like is a really useful hands-on kind of treatment. And basically, the idea behind it is scraping or rubbing the skin in a way that stimulates the skin and stimulates circulation to the area and to the skin in general, and movement of blood and lymph in superficial tissue. So in my family's tradition, the way we approach this, at least, and I'm not sure if this goes, how far back this goes, but one of my ancestors in the 1800s wrote quite a bit about it, so I know it was at least popular at that time. The way they approached it was with brushing. So having a soft bristle brush or medium softness of bristles, not something that was going to really abrade the skin, but something that would just move the fluids under the skin, and vigorously brushing with that. So that's one way of doing it. And with that, you'd have something like a natural bristle brush. You can buy body brushes that are for this. Some of them have nylon bristles, some of them have other kinds of bristles. Back in the 1800s, they were using boar bristles, which are like pig hair, basically. And you can probably still get that. That's a stiffer thing than some of the softer. Some of them are made out of plant fibers like sisal. It's not sisal, it's I can't think of the name of it, but some soft plant fibers. Some of them are made out of nylon. But you just kind of, the idea behind it with all of these practices is that you're rubbing the skin outward in the direction that circulation goes. So outward from the heart for the most part. If it's on the trunk, it's not as much, you don't notice, it's not as important, but on the limbs, especially going outward from the trunk, so that you're not pushing stuff back the wrong direction in the veins. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to push things the wrong direction through against the way that they're trying to go. So you're generally just kind of lightly pushing outward with a brush or of different things that have been used. A lot of the time, if you buy things for it, they're called combs, but they're not really usually like combs, but wooden combs have been used for this. Spoon is a really good, basic, powerful tool for this process. So that if you were only going to have one one gua sha tool, I think a regular spoon would be a good thing to have. What you don't want is anything with a very angular edge. You want something with a smooth, rounded edge, because if it's got any kind of, not even just a sharp edge, but an edge that comes to any sort of corner, then that's going to be a little too intense. It's gonna pinch the skin as it's moving along it, rather than just gliding and pushing the fluids under it. So that's essentially what you're doing with this process, is pushing fluids under the skin. In a milder form, like skin brushing, it'll just sort of pink the skin up or make the skin a little more livid, bring a little more circulation, blood to the area. And if you're using a more intense action and a stiffer substance, like a spoon or like a wooden comb or a piece of horn or a piece of jade, or there are various other things out there. But the main thing is that it's a stiff object that's not too sharp or anything. If you're doing a more intense version of it, you can actually get little petechia or little red marks under the surface of the skin that that fade. They're kind of like the same nature as the suction marks from the cupping. But basically, you'd have something like spoon or whatever and just sort of scrape along the skin. And you can do it pretty quickly. And, if you have light skin, you can really see a quick change in the color of the tissue. If you have darker skin, it might not be as obvious. I have very pale skin, so just even after doing that, it's got some redness to it. Doesn't show up so well for the camera, but some redness that's a little bit of most of that's going to fade in a few minutes, but a little of it will stick around. Some people really like to do this until there's like a really dark red mark there. And that is traditional in a lot of places. It's kind of, maybe more intense of a treatment than what a lot of people are looking for. But this has a couple of different features to it physiologically as far as what it's doing. One of them is that it's moving lymph fluid and circulation. And that's a big part of it. So, if you're just like with the Moxa and other things, circulation is a big part of how it works. But in this case, you're actually physically moving the fluids, whereas with Moxa, you're not necessarily touching the person, you're kind of changing how their body is responding. With this, you're actually physically moving the fluids under the surface of the skin, pushing them along with the mechanical force of the object that you're using on the skin. And for me, I like smooth, stiff objects for this. There are all kinds of things out there for it that are, maybe they're jagged or maybe they have, all sorts of different textures. I like smooth things. Copper and jade are traditional materials. I can't really tell a huge difference in whether, I'm using a jade spoon or whether I'm using a plain kitchen spoon like that. The I think part of that is just aesthetic. I think part of it is, just kind of having a special tool that's just especially for that, that's made out of a strange substance and stuff like that. I think it's, part of it is aesthetic and atmospheric rather than physiological. There may be some physical, jade definitely has the reputation of like influencing the flow of fluid through the body. And, another name for jade is nephrite, which means the kidney mineral. The I just means it's a mineral, but the nephro part means that it's affiliated with the kidneys because it's supposed to help move fluid through the body and, make the kidneys work more. I don't know if it really does. I can't tell from using it. Like I said, if I use a jade spoon or a non-jade spoon, feels like I get about the same results to me. Other people might say differently. But another tool that is a different shape that is kind of useful is a ring. A ring will, it's kind of more scoop-like than a spoon, and it moves a little differently than a spoon across the surface of the skin. Because with the spoon, you've got a handle, and that means leverage. And with the ring, you don't really have that, but it pushes a little deeper into the skin and it leaves a little more of a narrow trail where it's scraping. So if you were working on a narrower part of the body, like the finger, it might be better for that. Let's see here, I've got like two narrow tracks here. I don't know, that's not even showing up for the camera so much. Let me see if I can do this. I don't know, but yeah, can leave a narrow line along the skin of the redness. So a ring is kind of, a different shaped tool, good for working on a small area like a finger or something like that. So this, the other thing besides moving the fluid that it's doing is basically irritating the skin and inflaming the skin a little bit. And what that can be used for is counter irritation. Counter irritation is used quite a lot in traditional medical systems around the world as being like a minor irritation in a more superficial layer of tissue to draw away from a deeper pain in a deeper layer of tissue. So, for example, if somebody has low back pain, and low back pain can be really difficult to treat. Often it doesn't have any obvious physical cause, like somebody will go and get x-rays and other imaging and things like that, and their medical people will say there's nothing wrong with you, and they're saying I'm in a lot of pain, I need something to help me with pain. And so then people accuse them of being a drug seeker, which I've always thought was a really weird term, because like seeking drugs is actually kind of the legitimate reason for people to go to a doctor. Like, that's what they do. That's why you go there. They you're either seeking surgery or you're seeking drugs. But that's something that they don't seem to get that about their practice. They're like, that's why people come to them. They're like, oh, this person is just coming to us because they want drugs. And it's like, well,
What's your alternative?
what else you got? What else you offering them? It sounds like what they
Okay,
really
great.
want
Yes.
is to not be in
Relief would be
pain.
great.
Relief would be great. They probably, they usually don't really care what that's from. So anyway, low back pain is really a common thing in our culture, because your pay doesn't go up and your bills don't go down just because your back gets weaker when you age, and so like a lot of people find themselves past their physical working prime and with at least as much, if not more, bills than they had when they were younger. And so people have to work harder than their bodies are really meant to, and they end up pushing themselves and ignoring signs that might lead them to rest under more natural circumstances, and then they get back pain that doesn't seem to show up on any x-rays or anything like that. And what it is just kind of stressed tissues, be they bone, joints, tendons, muscles. All of it is just kind of not broken, but under more strain than it needs to be under. So the most definitive treatment for that is for them to be able to rest. But in situations where that's not possible, or in addition to that, gua sha can be really helpful for drawing the irritation to the surface, getting the body to feel a stinging warm pain on the surface rather than an ache, a cold ache deeper in the body. Your body's only capable of producing so much pain neurotransmitters, and so superficial things like that can often help to deplete the pain response from other things. And it also increases circulation, which can promote healing. So if I was doing gua sha on somebody for low back pain, I actually do a big triangle with the point being up again at the costovertebral angle, and the base of the triangle being across the top of the pelvis, and just kind of scraping that whole area until it's very red, and then putting cayenne salve on it, which keeps it warm for longer. And that combination is very simple. There's really not much that can go wrong with it. The worst is that they sweat and the cayenne salve drips down to more sensitive areas of their body and it burns, but that's pretty easily fixed. So there's not a lot of potential for complications as compared to, say, oxycodone, and the level of relief is often similar. So it's and sometimes much better. So it's a really good thing to be able to intervene in that kind of situation, because it is such a pervasive problem with the work culture that we have, and the conventional answer for it can be really problematic. So this is something that something you can do at home instead. That's really really safe.
What about that upper neck? I'm sorry. You go. The neck region, like
Yeah, you can do it on the neck too.
Would you do just the inverted triangle then?
I would just kind of do wherever the muscles go that are for
Okay.
stabilizing the neck. Which often be up and down the neck, and then these muscles along the sides of the shoulders as well. So yeah, and you can do it on a lot of on any area. Most medical traditions have some rubefacient herbs, some herbs that can be applied to the skin that will cause the same type of effect as that counter irritation, not the fluid movement part, but the counter irritation part of the thing. And so I often use things like that along with it. Cayenne salve is kind of my go-to for that because it's easily obtainable. It's a familiar substance. People aren't scared of it. You know, if you try to use something like Jack in the Pulpit, not only is it not as easy to get, but also people are like, well, what's that? I don't know if it's safe. And then they look it up and it says it's poisonous, and it is poisonous, but you don't want them to eat it. And that sort of thing. So usually cayenne is a really good one to use.
What about like, so if you have like TMJ or sinus congestion
Mhm.
and you're wanting to do like gua sha there, but you have to go out from the heart, would you just bring it down and down and down and then go out from the heart? Is that
Actually, on the face, I would go out from the midline of the body.
okay?
And if I'm doing gua sha on somebody's face, I'm trying not to make marks. I'm trying to go very slowly and gently and just push the fluid without doing a lot of counter irritation. And it's pretty good for that. Like if you have a thick gua sha comb or something like that, I mean, wide gua sha comb or something like that, that you can just push out from the midline of face with here and here. A lot of the time that will get, you know, mucus to drain. And then
And like earaches, can you do along
mhm,
the neck and just kind of drain that?
yeah, you can do it the same kind of thing.
It's essentially like a massage. I mean,
It's like massage,
is
it's like
gua sha
lymph.
kind of-
Yeah, it's like a really intense shallow tissue massage.
Yeah,
But yeah, and you know, with that, ginger is also an herb that you can use that's counter irritant along with this. And mustard, we talked about mustard in class, and you know, using mustard plasters and things like that. So that can be used in this type of situation as well. If it's I really like, if I'm trying to move fluid in somewhere that is part of or is adjacent to the respiratory system, I really like to use mustard for that. It seems to be better for draining the sinuses.
you do, I mean, will mustard irritate the skin, like if
A little bit, yeah.
like if you wanted to do like a little pack, like
Yeah, what I would do is like make I actually have a tincture of it, but you could make a water-based extract of it too, and then soak some paper in that and then put it on the area,
oh, okay.
soak
So,
something absorbent
Is
in
there
it.
a particular type of mustard you made your tincture out of? Would you
Hot
use
yellow mustard,
hot yellow mustard?
yeah. Second question here. Rachel asks, would you do moxa and or cupping first before gua sha and cayenne? Sometimes, like with the low back, sometimes I'll do cupping and then gua sha. And with the facial stuff, I'll often do moxa first. Sometimes I do moxa instead, but often if I was going to do gua sha, I would probably do moxa first. Cupping on the face is fairly impractical. I haven't really ever done cupping on someone's face other than right on their head, on the sides of their
That
head,
would be
but
like
yeah,
polka dots all on it.
yeah. But yeah, you can use these in combination with each other for sure, and it can be a very good thing too. So yeah, most of the time I'm using a rounded implement to do gua sha. like the spoon or the ring, a comb or a flat implement. I have like a little, I don't have it here. I have a couple of different rectangles made out of horn, like water buffalo horn, that are just, for a wider, flatter line of scraping. And that can be good too. In the medicine wagon, I have a jade spoon that I've had for a long time, which is, it's a neat little thing. It looks magical, but it does about what a regular spoon does.
But it's jade. So.
But it's jade, and it's like, it's jade, and the jade's like held on with silver, and the handle's wooden, and it looks like just like a little piece of a twig or whatever, so it looks very gnarly and magical, potentially
It's your
ancient.
magic wand.
Yeah, magic spoon. But it's looks like something you would find in a witch's cottage or whatever. So that's different shapes. It's good to have some different shapes to use, but basically the two main shapes are rounded and straight across. And everything else is kind of secondary to that. But the other thing about it is it's there's two different motions, one of which is pushing, which is a gentler motion, and the other of which is flicking, which is a more intense motion. So you can push in a straight line, or you can flick along the line. The flicking motion is like, let's see, like this as you go along, rather than just pushing in a straight line. So both of those motions are, part of your skill set when you're doing gua sha. Usually I like to do gua sha, especially when I'm starting just dry without any sort of oil or anything. Sometimes as it gets redder, it can be a good idea to put on something that is both lubricating and warming, like the cayenne salve, or
So during the scraping,
during the scraping. Yeah, I'll often put something on there that's warming, and but to begin with, I like to just do it without anything, because it helps to start getting it warmed up, start warming the tissue. And yeah, so that's kind of the overview of gua sha. Mostly use it on areas that are hurting, either to draw, either to decrease the deeper pains by creating a more superficial irritation, or just to move the fluids and increase the circulation through an area. And it's not something that I use as often as cupping moxibustion. Especially, I use it more when I'm doing first aid and it's more of a sports medicine-y type context, because that's when it's really shines, is, people get minor injuries, things that, like if somebody takes a fall, hurts a muscle, something like that, and you do something like gua sha or moxa 2 on it, a lot of the time the next day it will feel fine instead of feeling a lot worse. And so, when it's the sort of thing that you can treat right away, it's really helpful for that. When I have people coming into the clinic, that's often not the situation. It's usually something that they've been dealing with for a while, and that they're, finally deciding to seek help with, rather than something that has just come up. But in the things that have just come up situation, it's a really more widely applicable type of intervention.
So it kind of essentially works kind of how you had talked earlier about stagnancies in the body. It's sort of the same idea. You're just wanting to like move things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So any questions about gua sha before we take a break? All right, well, we'll take a break for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll meet back here and then head over to the Arboretum. So plan on going live again at about 2 this. So we'll hopefully get to see some interesting plants.
Fun. Andrea?